Hey, this is a segment of our Fast Break podcast. If you guys want to check out more from MVP, hit us up at mostvaluablepodcast.com. Hope you guys enjoy. Keep on trucking.
For some reason, you're like a 40-year-old smoker who does like a pack a day.
We're not going to argue over.
We're going to play some Jumanji.
We're not going to.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is a Fast Break podcast. I'm your host, Sean Anderson, and alongside me, as always, is Ricky Widmer.
What's up?
And Dave Oster.
Trying to block the No finger guns.
We got the finger guns going because we have the camera on us. We are the video podcast this week on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, hey guys, how's it going? And if you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, you downloaded us off of Blog Talk Radio. We want to thank you for checking us out there. Hope you come back week in and week out. If you're a weekly listener, then thank you very much. But we got a great episode for you this week. We're going to be talking about Bulls. Shocker.
What?
Talking about the Bulls.
I get to take the leash off?
See, okay, but
Can I take the leash off?
real quick. We're talking.
No, I can't.
We're talking about the Bulls because there was an article, and it's a very interesting article written by Mark Stein. That's the only reason why I'm allowing it.
But there was also an article last week.
But this one's actually important.
Okay.
Then
leash is off.
Then we're
It's
also
on the floor.
we're also talking about which West teams need to make a deal to kind of get back into the race, or kind of solidify their footing in the race. And then to wrap it up, we're going to be talking about what makes an all-star in the NBA, because we've had a couple topics that have been kind of controversial, and we've had to defend ourselves in the comments thread, and we just want to kind of say what makes an all-star to us, and I'm sorry, not an all-star, a superstar to us, and kind of what that really entails in today's NBA and today's market and today's kind of land of in social media and just the what's it called? Culture.
World.
In culture, that's what it is. Culture is the word. But anyways, let's jump into.
You got there, champ.
Let's jump into the Chicago Bulls here, and there's an article now out on ESPN about Mark Stein wrote it, and it's about Fred Hoiberg possibly being on the hot seat for the Chicago Bulls. Not saying that he should, but it's possibly saying that he should be on the hot seat. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but when they signed D-Wade, when they signed Rajon Rondo, I said that it would not work. And the whole start of the season where they were red hot, and it kind of made me a little bit nervous that I was going to be wrong. But now this December has not been good to the Chicago Bulls, and now I used to say that Fred Hoiberg should be getting fired, and that was after 1 year. And
Which is hard to do.
Now I'm saying that he should still be on the hot seat because this team has fallen off, and you two are the Bulls fans here. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's a little early. I think
It's very early.
I'm not a huge Fred Hoiberg fan. But I think the man deserves a little bit more time. Give him to the end of the year. No harm. It's not like some coach will just magically become available midseason who's a better pickup than Fred. Mm-hmm. So I think you let him play it out. You let him see what he can do. This team has everything it needs to go to the playoffs. It's just a matter of if he can coach them there, because it's on him at this point. The talent is there.
Well, and the thing that I look at is, Sean, by the way, unpopular opinion, man. Not a lot of people said the Bulls were going to miss the playoffs and not do good after they signed D-Wade. I look at this and
there's
I go...
a lot of hype on this, off
camera,
on camera, on this side of the table
because,
for the Bulls.
I know for me, I was excited we got D-Wade, but it wasn't like dude, we got D-Wade, LeBron, watch out, we coming for you.
I think my words were,
for you.
It was going to be a shit show, but it's going to be an exciting shit show.
And it has been an exciting shit show. Did you not see that Brooklyn game? Did you not see Jimmy sprain the ankle?
They beat
come back
Brooklyn,
in?
and
yeah,
he
who
beat
cares?
Bojan Bogdanovic.
Great game, though, and a great game winner, a great moment for Jimmy Butler after being injured coming back. But my point with this one is, with the team that he has had out there, can you really blame Fred Hoiberg? And I say no.
Yes.
Well, I say no because it's not like, all the blame's on the players, but... Yes, you can put the blame on where, Denzel Valentine, was that the right pick to make? Because he was there and made that pick. But also it's the point
He's not the GM, though.
And that's what I'm getting to. Garpax is there, and they are the reason where we've said it time and time again. The Bulls have been, we got to stay here in mediocrity so that we are here and people know about us. We can't fall out and be like the Sixers and get young talent to then eventually get better.
And that's what you mean. You want to stay at least relevant.
Yeah.
And not, I mean,
In Chicago,
the
it's
8
hard
seeds
to
to win.
The whole goal for the Bulls is to be winning championships, but they don't want to be into the basement where they're not, in the forefront. So as
We don't
long
want
as
to
they're
go back
bringing
to the Elton Brand days.
they're making a splash here by signing D Wade, and that's one thing that I do want to make sure that I do make clear. Yes, I do want to say that Fred Hoiberg, all the blame shouldn't be on Fred Hoiberg here. It should be definitely on the front office. And there was when we talked about coaches being on a hot seat, someone brought up in the comments, I think it was Anthony, he said that it shouldn't always be on the coach. It should be on the GM.
Right.
And here with Chicago Bulls, it's the owner, it's the GM, it's the coach. It's pretty much all of it in my mind. Because yes, Garpax has given terrible teams and has made wrong moves, not trading Paul Gasol, not playing the right players, not picking up the right players, bringing in questionable players like D Wade and Rajon Rondo on deals. And the one thing I will give to Fred Hoiberg is he hasn't had a consistent roster in 2 years. I mean, D Rose and Jimmy Butler weren't a good pair, and I think we knew that last year. And then you had always the rumors of maybe Taj is going to get traded, maybe Paul Gasol is going to get traded. Joakim Noah doesn't like Fred Hoiberg, so they got out the bad, which was Paul Gasol trade rumors, Joakim Noah not liking Fred Hoiberg and Derrick Rose. And then once we saw the start of the season with D Wade, Rondo, and Wade, we saw kind of loose free basketball, and it was working. But now when we're getting to the grit of the season, when teams are warmed up, teams have been kind of playing with each other now, the whole we're surviving off of talent isn't working for the Chicago Bulls. So I will give Fred Hoiberg some kind of leeway because he hasn't had a consistent roster, he hasn't had a consistent team really around him to coach. But the same problems I saw last year are still here because he still has a good roster. He still has good players. And I just don't see any imaginative offense. And he's really just going back to what he knows. And what he knows does not work in the NBA.
See, I kind of disagree with the fact that the same
fine.
problems we had last year are not the same ones we have this year. The part you said about the offense,
I'm saying
that I agree with.
From him as a coach.
Yeah, but last year was all drama. It was what you said, the Rose, the Noah. This year was about moving on from it. It's Jimmy's team. We brought in Wade. We brought in Rondo to be not, like I said, not like, we're going to win a championship this year, but just that veteran, just kind of mentorship for this team. And the one thing I look at is he was hired on June 2nd of 2015. So that way you could put the Bobby Portis pick. I say you could put that on him because he had, let's say, a month to work with the Bulls staff, with Garpax, to make that pick. I want to focus in on Bobby Portis here. Should we blame Hoiberg because Bobby Portis hasn't lived up to what we thought he was? Because to me, Bobby Portis has been, at this point, not what we thought he was. And at this point, if he continues this, could be a bust.
Well, one thing with this is, Bobby Portis has shown flashes under Hoiberg. Last year he wasn't bad. Last year we did see Bobby Portis kind of late in the season kind of come on, and then obviously we saw him great in the summer league. But I think that you can't really blame the coach for a guy that Garpax picks because, Garpax probably had Bobby Portis on their radar way before they hired Fred Hoiberg. And maybe Fred was like, yeah, I think I would like working with the guy. But I don't think the pick of Bobby Portis and the pick of Denzel Valentine really falls on Fred Hoiberg.
And that's the point I'm going with. Is this Hoiberg's fault that he can't get anything going, or is it Garpax saying, hey, here's the guys you have to play with, and he's got to kind of fit them into this offensive system?
What I'm saying is I've never been sold on Hoiberg as a coach in general, so it's not that it's Hoiberg's fault. It's not that it's completely his fault, but I just don't think he is an NBA coach.
And we all expected him to, Thibodeau, defense, the offense wasn't good. We're bringing in an offensive coach, we're going to be great at offense. It doesn't work like that, like a light switch.
Offensively, he wasn't all there. He didn't know how to use the pieces we had. And to make the case about both Bobby Portis and even, Nikola, or if you want to toss in Denzel, I think there is definitely some pressure from Garpax to play certain players more than others. And I think that if Bobby and Denzel, I don't want to go to fucking Miritich right now, but if Bobby and Denzel both got more time, maybe they could develop better. Maybe they could. I think there is some coaching lacking there, and that's maybe why we're not seeing great development. From year 1 to year 2, there's a lot to learn in the NBA, and I think that if you have a great coach, or at least a mentor-like coach, who can kind of guide you and help progress your game, especially when you have a guy who is here's the spitting image of the guy we want you to be, in Taj Gibson on the team already. You need to be him, but with more energy, like just turn back the clock from him. You have Bobby Portis, who actually might have a better outside shot, in the small glances of this is what Bobby could be versus here's the disappointing season that he's having right now. I feel like it's a failure of coaching with the right pieces.
It's like I just pulled up. There's an article on the Tribune where they talk about, and the headline just says it's easy to rip Fred Hoiberg, but the problem is our poor drafting and then the development of that.
I don't know if it's poor drafting. I will agree that there were some questionable draft picks, but we still should have seen some progress of any players in the last couple of years, and we haven't.
See, I think it's also kind of going back into that we need to at least stay relevant,
and that's
you're there in that dangerous position where you're not a lottery team or you're a very fringe lottery team where you're not going to get a guy who's going to change your franchise, but you're going to have to pick a guy who's young because you're not going to be able to pick a guy like say a guy who like Denzel Valentine. Obviously they picked him, but a guy who's more of a solidified player, and you don't need to develop him that much. So the thing with the Bulls is you're not going to be picking later in the rounds because you're making deep runs in the playoffs.
Because they refuse to be terrible because you're in Chicago and you get murdered by the media.
Exactly, and it's kind of like with the Bengals in the NFL, where they're always in that 19 to 22 range, where you're not going to be able to draft a real game changer unless you're scouting. And I know the NFL draft's different than the NBA draft, but still you're putting yourself in a terrible position.
They're forcing themselves to use free agency much more, and we've seen that out of their defense. And I don't want to go too far in the NFL, but that's what they did in Cincinnati. Was they went out and they went and grabbed a ton of free agent talent in their defense, and that kind of helped fill in those gaps from the poor draft options they had. And in the NBA, free agency is kind of like a clusterfuck compared to the NFL. So when it comes to trying to fill in the right pieces, it's harder to do because there's not as many guys who fit your mold.
And another thing too, I mean, if you're going to pick a guy like from the 15 range, you might find a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, which I said his name right, where he is a very raw prospect where you're going to have to develop him. But we're bringing up, we don't think that Hoiberg can develop these guys.
Yeah.
And one thing with Hoiberg is he's been working, at least at his time with Iowa State is, he really didn't need to develop guys. He just had talent, and then they fit into his offense. And guys like Georges Niang, I mean, I believe Hoiberg came in when Niang was a sophomore or like a junior. I don't think he was with Niang his whole time in Iowa State. And I might be wrong here completely, but I don't think Hoiberg had the molding on Niang's game. And I don't think he did that much developing in college where, he just used the actual talent of these kids and threw them into an offense where, in the NBA, you need to see progression because you're going to be working with these guys for possibly their whole career.
And here's another thing to think about. And I love Jimmy Butler. Let me say that before I put this out there.
Jimmy G.
But Jimmy this season is 27. Yep. And that puts the Bulls in a little bit of to me, a hard spot because can you necessarily say, okay, we got this guy for after this year. We've got him for 3 years under contract. Mm-hmm. Well, 2 and then an option year.
Right.
Is that a
player option?
Okay. So 2 years.
For 2 years. He could come back if we're good by then, but the point I was making...
He's going to want more money, so 2 years.
Yeah, so the contracts will change.
The point that I was going to make, though, is with him being 27, could the Bulls say, we're going to go young, we're going to get you talent to build around you, but by the time that young talent develops, or by the time you develop them correctly, he's 30.
And real quick before we get to the main question here, and that's of should he be on the hot seat, should he be fired? The thing I want to mention about Jimmy Butler is, I started looking into my mock draft and looking what's available. Obviously, last year what was thrown out there was Boston Celtics trying to look for a trade for Jimmy Butler. Right now they have the number 2 pick overall with that Nets pick, which was a terrible trade. They're able to swap picks with the Nets this year in 2017. They have the number 2 overall pick, which is, I mean, that's some pretty nice thing to dangle out in front of the Bulls here and be like, hey, you want a franchise changer who's 27, you have years of control with, here's Jimmy Butler.
Well, I mean, which I immediately think of, and I'm not saying trade Jimmy, but I mean, if that happened, the top 3, give me any of them. Give me Markelle from Washington. I could take a point guard.
Lonzo Ball.
Give me Ball,
Malik Monk.
He can play shooting guard or point guard, or give me Malik Monk. Give me any of those guys.
And Miami Heat currently have the 5th overall pick. Pat Riley doesn't rebuild.
I think
Pat Riley doesn't rebuild. He could trade that 5th overall pick.
I mean, Justice has been disappointed as all hell this year. So,
but you get Jimmy Butler, then you can have Hassan Whiteside, and then you bring in a free agent. Pat Riley doesn't rebuild. What are you talking about? He doesn't need draft picks. And Minnesota too. Minnesota's got the number 6 overall pick. We always talked about Chris Dunn, Tom Thibodeau wanting to reunite. That could be floated out there. So
and that's the decision the Bulls have to make is at 27 is Jimmy
you
entering.
still have. But he's prime right now.
Is he entering his prime now?
Yeah. 27 is your athletic prime as a male. Like,
he's still got 6 years of like good basketball left.
I would say 5 years probably, and then special because of his health.
Yeah.
But by the time we would properly develop the young talent at the rate that we are going, he'd be gone. He'd be done.
We've yet to develop young talent.
Now, I mean, like
Jimmy's the only one that was saying Hoiberg.
I'm saying if we did, like if we went out there and was like, we're just going to go all in, get young talent. By the time that young talent got to the point where it's like he'd be a core.
He'd be a little younger than Dwayne Wade, but he'd be in the Dwayne Wade range. So it's like,
and it would be like,
you're
a
savvy veteran who is a great asset to the team, but you might not be that star of the team anymore.
And now I'll wrap it. I'll start to wrap it up. I'll give my opinion, and then we'll go to the Bulls fans here's opinion.
All right.
I think that right now with Hoiberg's contract, they signed him to a 5-year contract worth $25 million, so it's going to be very difficult to cut him. Guaranteed money. I think they need to swallow a lot of it. I don't know exactly
Lord
the numbers
knows we're
here.
Cheap as shit too.
From what Mark Stein's saying. So, do I think it's going to happen? I don't think Fred Hoiberg is going to get fired at least after this season. But should he be on the hot seat? I definitely think it should be a possibility because I think that everyone in this Bulls organization should be on the hot seat because the GM isn't working, the coach isn't working, and the owner hasn't been working, and he got lucky getting Michael Jordan in the 1986, 84, whatever draft it was, 85 draft. And that's the only reason why Jerry Reinsdorf has succeeded as the Bulls owner is because he got Michael Jordan in his lap after the Portland Trail Blazers fucked up and picked Sam Bowie. But anyways, Dave, should he get fired?
I think he should. I don't think he will. I just don't believe in him, and I think that a better coach is out there who you need to have a coach who's focused on young player development because let's be honest, if we keep rotating over these aged veterans in free agency, like you mentioned it earlier on, when you don't have a core for a couple years, everything is changing around you. You can't build any semblance of momentum going forward. So it's really hard to come together and be like, all right, this is our year. We're going for it. We've got the right signs. We've got the growth, and you don't have that because you're swapping in pieces. And that's why you like those young teams like the Timberwolves where you see them kind of grow. You like the Bucks. You like the even, to be honest, the Lakers. Like a lot of these younger teams, the Suns have a lot of good pieces. And it's like, they're going to be together until you decide to break them up. So having that core to build off of versus having next guy up in free agency, worlds apart.
And one thing too with Jimmy, he kind of represents the old NBA play of like, Paul Pierce, who was great both ways. But like now Jimmy isn't that guy who can be a dynamic scorer from the outside. He's a good 3-point shooter, and he's improved his game, but still he's not that guy who kind of fits the new NBA. And that's kind of, if your core is built around a guy of the old NBA who's not named LeBron James, it's gonna be very hard to win. But Ricky,
I'm going to go on the other side. I think that the focus shouldn't be now, is he 100% clean? No. But I think that the focus should not be put on Fred Hoiberg. It's got to be put on Garpax. A change needs to be made at the top because it's one of those things where I feel like Fred Hoiberg could have some success if the upper management helped him out and kind of gave him a bone. I feel like with this team as of late, it's basically, hey, you know what? If things aren't working, throw the coach out there. He's a scapegoat. But the one thing I do want to say, if Fred Hoiberg is fired, Illinois, I hope you're listening, fire John Gross, get Fred Hoiberg.
And that's going to wrap it up for the
I still want Shaka Smart. I'm just saying.
Could you imagine Illinois having a former Bears coach in the football and a former Bulls coach for the basketball?
You'd be
It'd still be irrelevant, unfortunately.
That's what I was going to say. You'd be in heaven, but they would still be irrelevant.
I don't know. Lovey's putting up those signs, the billboards that say, we will win.
Doesn't mean it's going to happen.
We will win.
Anyways, Bulls Talk wrapped up here, and you probably don't have to hear it for another month. But one thing I do want to say, final on the Bulls Talk.
You can hear it on my Twitter.
Final on the Bulls Talk. It was a bad December for the Bulls, but if a good January happens, then they're right back in the playoff race. So it's not a done season yet, and this could just be an overreaction.
That's it. It's a done, it's December. There's a lot of the season left, and hey, we had a bad December, and we're still the 8th seed right now.
And I hope you guys enjoyed that podcast from the Fast Break. If you want to check out more, click on the video right over there. Giddy up.